And a lot of that comes from our genes. In terms of the diet, people shouldn't just say, oh, carbs are bad or carbs are good or anything. It's like, no, actually, high amounts of carbs are bad for me.
Welcome to PricePlow.
What's going on, everyone? This is Mike with PricePlow.com, and I'm rolling right into this video from my last video where I showed how MCT oil increased my blood ketone count in my blood tests and everything. So you can click back and I'll have a link to that video if you want to see how it works. But long story short is I was surprised when I was doing it, and then after I figured out this whole reaction, which makes it happen, it's actually not surprising at all, given that I'm in ketosis right now. And so this is more of a rant video. I'm not citing sources. I'm going to throw down a lot of bro science and a lot of personal opinion, and it might offend some people. I don't care. This is what I believe. Feel free to argue or cite the sources for me if you know more than I do, because obviously I'm learning this stuff. But so I think it's pretty clear, though, especially for an athlete, that our bodies prefer carbohydrates. It's the easiest source. It's you don't have to go through all this rigmarole to get some energy and everything. And an athlete is going to have better performance when they have glucose readily available. But a lot of people say, there's a lot of detractors of the keto diet, a lot of detractors on the low carb thing, and I think it's going to get worse. That's another rant coming. But basically they're like, oh, but you can't live without carbohydrates. You're going to die. Or, no, you're not going to die. That's the thing. Because the human body is such a beautiful, wonderfully evolved, amazing machine that we are adapted to all kinds of situations. And so, and I don't believe that we're all the same. And I think that genetics does have a lot of components to this. But for the most part, a lot of us can live perfectly fine without carbohydrates or with very low amounts of carbohydrates, because our bodies have multiple mechanisms that can produce energy. Do you think? And so you have to think about, like, 20,000 years ago, my peoples are, I have an Italian, a European kind of background, and the areas that I'm from, those people they had winter. And so do you think that fruit was just like flowing during the winter? And I'm talking about before there was agriculture. My body, my genetics aren't that much different. They aren't that far removed from the genetics of my ancestors from 20,000 years ago, pre-agriculture, when they didn't have a ton of wheat and corn and everything just sitting there all winter. So what do you think they did? They didn't have as many carbs around. Do you think they died? Obviously not. No, because our bodies adapt. And the people and my ancestors, or I guess my potential ancestors, who weren't able to go into this kind of mode when there were no carbs around, guess what? They didn't make it probably past breastfeeding, and they didn't have the ability to then reproduce and end up with what I am right here today. And so this is really the whole basis of Darwin's theory of evolution via natural selection, is that our bodies pass on genes after being successful. And there's no doubt in my mind that humans had to adapt to both carbohydrate-based situations and no carbohydrated situations. And I think this is why it's so awesome. There's so many things that our bodies that we don't use in our bodies that we're able to do if we need to. When we're in an emergency situation, if I'm starving, this happens. I'm gonna start making ketones for my energy. It's a very high possibility that if I have a heart attack, ketones are going to be sent to my heart. These things happen, and our bodies are incredibly well adapted to do these things. And that's why I just think it's like so cool to learn about this. Now, parlaying into my next point, I want to explore these different processes a little bit more. Now, let's say this enzyme is required to make ketogenesis happen. If someone has been on carbs their entire life, but things just aren't working out that well, like, for instance, CJ on our channel and I are very different. If I had his diet, he can handle a lot of carbs. If I had his diet, I would be fat as hell. And it's just a fact, unless I was running 2-a-days or whatever, like swimming in the morning and lifting at night and everything. Like, his kind of diet would absolutely devastate my body. I can't stay lean like that. And so I have a feeling that there is a very big genetic difference between many of us individuals. And that's perfectly fine, but I think you should at least explore other things if something's not working for you. For instance, so I need this enzyme to make this happen. Possibly, there's a really good chance, and I don't know, I haven't done this research, of course, but there's a really good chance that there's a gene expression out there that has, like, as a switch where this enzyme or this next enzyme right here is upregulated, where it just works really efficiently. Whereas possibly with something within the other end of this cycle, the Krebs cycle, maybe I'm not converting to citrate as well as someone like CJ, or maybe, a zillion other things are happening. And so I don't believe that we all have equivalent efficiencies. I believe that there are genes out there that flip on and off. And for whatever reason, throughout the course of my ancestors' evolution, whatever I was given from my ancestors, I truly believe that in terms of staying lean and fit, healthy, happy, and smart, I am better adapted, and my processes in ketogenesis are far more efficient. And I don't know why. I haven't I have done a 23andMe kind of analysis, but I haven't looked at what genes might take role in that. I just have a feeling that we're not all equal. We are not, and all of our enzyme processes don't all work the same. Enzymatic processes don't all work the same. And so some stuff just doesn't work as well as others, and a lot of that comes from our genes. So I think that in terms of the diet, people shouldn't just say, oh, carbs are bad or carbs are good or anything. It's no, actually, high amounts of carbs are bad for me, in my experience, unless I'm doing intense grueling training. But yeah, high fat diet, saturated fat might not be good for you. And so it's different. There's no end all be all. And so my point is, if you're having trouble with a certain type of lifestyle, if the low fat diet isn't working for you, or if the balanced diet isn't working for you, so long as you can get your vegetables and fruits in properly, especially the veggies and the fiber and all that, I truly do believe that maybe you should try something else. Because you don't know. There's certain people that just simply handle carbohydrates better or worse than other people. And I really, obviously, I believe that there's a genetic expression involved there. And so my third point is that you start seeing these studies. And now that I start looking at this and I see, obviously I'm pretty happy and I'm pretty content on a low carb diet. Some people, they feel like they're just going to die and they never get out of it. They are miserable. I don't have that problem. I have a feeling that somehow this is just working efficiently for me. But we start looking at these studies, and these studies come out. Obviously, there's a lot of dirt that goes on behind the studies that we don't get to see, and that's another video that's coming. So it's tough to trust things as it is. That's actually 2 more videos coming. Jeez. And so, but the whole point is, if you see these studies and they're not really discussing the whole genetic side of things, then really, I think we're missing out on more than 60% of the story, because they might say, oh, saturated fat is bad. It's well, did you cross-reference it with the genomes of the people who are getting screwed up by the saturated fats? If they were getting screwed up in the first place, if you're not lying in the study or anything. Because if they're not, I don't know if that person's different than me. That could have been some person who's I'm not an Asian, I'm not a South American. What if it was some person who's lived in South America, in Ecuador, and their ancestors have been there for 40,000 years, and this dude is just carb adapted because there's bananas all around all the time. And so they are very good at processing sugar. Hey, my people, we didn't have bananas like that around. And so my body, or my ancestors, had to learn to adapt to a different kind of thing. And so I have different genes than the dude in Ecuador. That's just how it is. We're different. And so my point is, if these studies aren't really starting to cross-reference the genome, and we're not putting this data into the cloud, we're not putting this data into big data systems and having a really smart big data kind of computer system pull down different bits and pieces, then I don't think any study is really that relevant. Okay, saturated fat didn't work so well for these dudes, but guess what? There's a really good chance that I am nothing like those dudes. Yeah, we're both human species and everything, but it doesn't mean that their enzymatic processes are as efficient or more or less efficient as mine. And so it really is getting to the point for me where if the studies are just kind of general and vague roadmaps, whereas I think you kind of got to do a little bit of research on your own. You need to look at what really works for you. And so as you see, when I'm doing these supplement reviews, I'm starting to say hey, this worked for me. I don't know if it is going to work for you or not. And so the point being is that the human body is this beautiful, awesome, evolved, incredible thing that is possible of doing so many things, and it will do so good of a job at not dying. As we see with obese people who are morbidly obese, the human body stays alive and it's able to do exactly what you program it to do. And so I've kind of programmed my body to say, hey, I don't need carbs. I get along fine with higher fat intake and just a little bit of protein, 150 grams a day or so, and a whole crap load of fat. And then my micronutrients are coming from the vegetables, but it's still low carbs, and I'm doing absolutely really fine. Now, as you probably noticed for some of our YouTube reviewers, I've definitely lost some muscle mass, and I'll work on all that. And but at the end of the day, for me, when it comes to like being in a lower fat mode, lower body fat, higher energy, more focused, not needing naps and crap like that, this style is working best for me. But you're never going to hear me say that it's going to work best for you. It might not work best for CJ. He's great with carbs. Guess what? I'm not. I got something better going on here, it seems like. I'm not sure, but I think there's a genetic component there. And so our bodies are awesome. We're great at adapting to this stuff, and I think it's fascinating. But at the same time, you got to figure out what works for you, man. And so this is Mike with Price Plow. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to explore these enzymatic reactions and everything, and maybe there are some genes related to the upregulation of all that, it would be cool to maybe cross-reference it with my 23andMe data. But overall, I appreciate you watching. And let's get back to testing some more and see what puts me into ketosis and what doesn't. Thank you.